Your genetics is not your destiny, it's just basically showing the card that you have right now, and you can play the card and fight it.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Longevity by Design. I'm your host, Ashley Reaver. This episode is an Ask Me Anything between Gil and I. As a registered dietitian, I'm asked about cholesterol all the time. In this episode, I explain how fiber impacts our blood cholesterol, what markers really matter for lipids, how often you should be checking your markers, and how much your diet really impacts those levels. I then ask Gil questions about physiological markers. He goes into detail about why VO2max is a crucial marker to track as you age. He also talks about sleep, the importance of maintaining muscle strength as you age, and much, much more. Finally, Gil answered questions from InsideTracker users about NMR, NAD analogs, and resveratrol that he gets asked on a daily basis. This episode was really fun to record, and I hope we answered some of your questions. Thank you for your continued support, and don't forget to rate and review the podcast.
Welcome to Longevity by Design, a podcast designed to give individuals access to the leading scientific information in the field of longevity. The ability to add years to your life and life to your years needs no opinion. Join us as we ask science to take the wheel. In each episode, Dr. Gil Blander joins a co-host and an industry expert in the field of longevity, shining a light and getting the answers to the key question: how can we live a longer, healthier life?
Hello, I'm Ashley Reaver. Welcome back to Longevity by Design, how to live a longer, healthier life. We're produced by InsideTracker, your science-based guide to optimizing your body from the inside out. Today's episode is an Ask Me Anything between Gil and I. We've gathered questions from listeners spanning different topics, including cholesterol, aging, and health span, and we're excited to debate the answers together. Welcome to today's episode.
Thank you, Ashley. It's a real pleasure. And this is our first AMA, so I'm very excited about that. And I hope that our listener will be excited as well. So I would like to start with a question to you. And maybe we'll start with talking about cholesterol and diet. And the question is if you can explain the relationship between dietary cholesterol intake and the level of the blood cholesterol.
Absolutely. This one, I feel like we get inundated with information in the media every 5 years or so. It comes back up that you shouldn't be eating eggs. But we actually know that your dietary intake of cholesterol doesn't have that much of an impact on your blood levels of cholesterol. So dietary cholesterol is something that we can only find in animal products because cholesterol is something that all animals are hardwired to make. And eggs, yes, are high in dietary cholesterol, as are some types of shellfish like shrimp. And before, the belief was that eating foods that were really high in dietary cholesterol had a big impact on our body's cholesterol level as well. And for some people, there may be a stronger relationship there, but for the majority of people, dietary cholesterol intake has a pretty small impact on our blood levels of cholesterol. So avoiding eggs outright just because they have dietary cholesterol in them isn't necessarily something that's recommended anymore. Eggs aren't necessarily a free food. They still have another nutrient in there that can impact cholesterol levels. But dietary cholesterol, when we eat it, it gets broken down and absorbed like all sorts of other fats that we eat. And then our body gets to decide what it wants to do with those building blocks. So we don't directly absorb cholesterol from our digestive tract, and it ends up in our bloodstream. Our body produces most of our cholesterol.
Okay, got it. So there is a follow-up question, and I'm sure that I know what is the answer, but I will ask it anyway because some of our listeners asked that. So what percentage of the cholesterol in our blood is made by our body versus the one that is taken from food?
So it's about 80-20 split. Our body makes about 80% of the cholesterol that's there kind of regardless of what we eat. And about 20% is something that can be influenced by our dietary intake. Importantly, I'll say that those are averages. For some people, perhaps they are much more sensitive to certain nutrients, or their diet is really lacking in other nutrients. And maybe their cholesterol levels are high because of those. And maybe they could see more than a 20% change. But as an animal, humans have all of the machinery to be able to make cholesterol because we need it. It's something that's in every cell in our body. It's in our hormones. It is needed for a digestive compound. So since we need it, our body's able to produce it from lots of stuff. Basically, anything that contributes energy can be produce cholesterol in the body, go into our endogenous cholesterol production. So an 80-20 split, our genetics do have a big impact on that, but genetics are not 100% of it. And just because someone in your family has high cholesterol doesn't mean that your cholesterol is high genetically and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And by the way, I have a high cholesterol, and I have also predisposition to high cholesterol based on my genetics. So I feel for everyone that struggle with this issue, and it's not an easy struggle. And we know that that can be show a predisposition to cardiovascular event in the future. So it's not a joke, and people should take care of it and treat it seriously. And the next question is maybe a follow-up for that. So for someone who has a high cholesterol, how often should he or she be testing their blood level? And which of the biomarkers are the best biomarkers for testing it?
So, I mean, for us at InsideTracker, we always like to say knowledge is power. You can make significant changes to your cholesterol levels in just 3 months. And that's something that I would strongly encourage if you're actively making changes to your lifestyle or the types of foods that you're including, or maybe including not quite as often. Getting some feedback that your body and your blood levels in particular are responding to those changes can be really, really beneficial. For many people that are working on lowering their cholesterol, maybe they get their blood work tested at the doctor's, and then maybe they're excited about those changes for a month or so. And then for the next 10.5 months, they don't really think about it again. And then 2 weeks before their appointment, they realize, shoot, I was supposed to be working on my cholesterol levels. I'm going to get my blood retested. I hope that they've changed. So testing every 3 months, again, can really help to make sure that the changes or the interventions you have selected are working. You can see if you're doing enough. Maybe you need to switch something. But they also do provide you that good feedback to keep going. If you haven't necessarily moved the needle as much as you'd like, you can start to change things. And again, it keeps it kind of front of mind so that it's not something you only think about every year, 2 weeks before you go to the doctors. And biomarkers to really think about. LDL cholesterol is certainly an important one. That one we know, we have the most research behind as being associated with the incidence of cardiovascular disease. Getting your ApoB checked is also important. So ApoB is something that we can find on those atherogenic lipids. So that includes LDL, but it also includes other types of lipoproteins. So precursors to LDL like IDL and VLDL, as well as lipoprotein A, which is something that is very strongly linked to your genetics and not something that can be manipulated with lifestyle factors. Your triglyceride levels, so the amount of circulating fatty acids or fats that we have in our blood, and HDL is also a great one. What you didn't hear there is total cholesterol. While that's an okay number to know, total cholesterol doesn't really tell us the story of what's happening. Someone could have very high LDL cholesterol, which is that potentially atherogenic type of lipoprotein, and really low HDL, which is the more protective form of lipoprotein. And they could have a normal total cholesterol number, but we know that ratio is not necessarily what we want. Even though it's below 200, it doesn't mean that it's quote unquote healthy. So LDL-C, ApoB, and triglycerides, as well as HDL, are the ones really to look for.
A comment about what you said about do it every quarter, because then it's a better chance that you will work on it in the gap between the tests. So I see the same as going to the hygienist at the dentist, and she explained to you and show you how to floss, and you're doing it for a few days, and then you forget about it, and then you go again after a year, and you're surprised that your gums are not in the condition that they're supposed to be. So I also applied it not only for InsideTracker, but also for the hygienist. And I'm going every quarter just because I know that I'm not as. So it's a way, and I agree with you. It's a way for you to force yourself to do a better job by having a feedback loop. So the blood test is a feedback loop, like the response for the hygienist and say, hey, you are not doing a good job, try to do it better. So
Yeah.
it's a very good a way to have the feedback, and more the merrier. Unfortunately, we cannot do a blood test. We can, but it's very hard and tedious to test every day, and I'm not sure that you'll get a lot of value from that. But if you can do every quarter, that will be amazing. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's funny if you Google how to lower cholesterol, the first thing that comes up is quickly. And I think that really speaks to the fact that, individuals or people forget that they're supposed to be working on that. And that's like rats. I've got to have this done in 2 weeks or else.
Yeah.
So the quickly part is definitely something to switch. You can do a slow drip over an entire year, or you're not going to be very effective if you just focus on it the 2 weeks before your doctor's visit.
Yeah, and it's I think that it's the quickly that you mentioned. It's very good point. There is no quick and dirty. There is no silver bullet. If you want to take care of the most important machine that you have, work on it hard and work on it for the long haul. It's not. And it is okay. By the way, we are recording it on Friday, so we are for the weekend. It's okay once a week to have a party day and don't do exactly what you're supposed to do, and then the other 6 days to do it. We are humans, and we want to have fun and we want to enjoy, but try it at least in the majority of your time to do what you are supposed to do, and then you'll be a 90% good. Most of us are not there, so try to be as good as you can. So another question that our audience asks is about what would you wish that our audience will know or understand about cholesterol that they don't?
I think the thing that I hear the most frequently that's I would say most impactful, just because it can stop people from even trying or starting to work on their cholesterol, is the notion of having a family history means that there's nothing that you can do about it. As a dietitian, I've also talked and worked with a lot of people about helping them lower their cholesterol levels. And often, they're told that, on your health form, you fill out, do you have any conditions? And if your dad or mom has high cholesterol, it's something that you would record there, or maybe their siblings. And importantly, I really just like to stress that while we know roughly 80% of cholesterol production is just based on the machinery that you inherited in your body, that other 20% can still have a really big impact. And we inherit so much more than just our genes from our family. Our genetic makeup. We also inherit foods that we incorporate all the time, foods that we think are weird, and maybe don't put into our diet that often, maybe how we celebrate things, how we de-stress, how we move our bodies. So that 20% actually has a really, really big impact. And again, I just hear from so many people that, their brother or their dad had high cholesterol and there's nothing that they can do about it, or sister or mom. It impacts men and women equally. And I think that that's just something that's really rooted in just recognizing that, you might have inherited a same lifestyle as other members of your family, that it makes a lot of sense if you eat the same way as your siblings, that they would have very similar conditions that could be caused by diet. And on that note too, is even if you do eat somewhat different from your family, the traditional diets in the United States, even these popular fad diets, still have too much of some nutrients and not enough of others. So the standard American diet, the two nutrients that can really have the biggest role in cholesterol would be saturated fat intake for those that have high cholesterol, and soluble fiber. Traditional American diet, really high in saturated fat, very low in fiber, including the soluble fiber. Keto diet, very high in saturated fat, very low in soluble fiber. Low carb, same thing. Paleo diet, same thing. So even individuals that, maybe try and eat quote unquote clean, whatever that definition is, you can still have high cholesterol if those two nutrients aren't in the right ratio. So Again, not necessarily thinking that having a family history because other members of your family have high cholesterol doesn't mean that there's necessarily nothing you can do. So it's not worth trying.
Yeah, and that was a very good point related to genetics is only 20%. Actually, in most cases, it's even less than that. For example, ApoB, that it's a biomarker that we had a few weeks ago. And when we looked at that, when our scientists looked into that and tried to understand what is the genetics in the level of, what is the effect of genetics on the level of ApoB, and the effect of genetics on ApoB is pretty high, it's only 13.5%, meaning that 86.5% is not genetics, meaning that you have a lot of work that you can do and change it. And that's ApoB that is pretty genetics. So I really like the analogy of going to Las Vegas and playing with a card. The genetics are the card that you receive. How you play the card is your lifestyle. So yes, some of us got a bad card. I got a bad card for cholesterol. That's I cannot do anything about it, but I can do a lot about how I am playing the cards. And that's what we should do. Try to focus on the half full of the cup and not the half empty. Yeah, I got a bad card for cholesterol. I can stay at home and whine about that, or I can work hard and try to fight my genetic or my potential. And I think that that's really the difference between people that are going into prevention and trying to improve their life and beats their odds versus someone say, oh, yeah, that's my genetics. Okay, I cannot do anything. And that's the big difference between the people that live until the 70s versus the 90s and 100. Those
Yeah.
are the people those are the pioneers that are fighting and trying and trying to biohack and trying to find the best way. How can we work the system in a way that, I haven't got the best counts, but I'll do the best with those counts.
Yeah. And focusing on the things that you can control. You're never going to be able to change your genetics, and you should run very far away from anyone that says you can do that. But just
Yeah.
because you can't control your genetics doesn't mean that you should ignore this long list of these other things that we know have a big impact on not just cholesterol, but a lot of other risk factors for developing disease or things that can influence your overall longevity too. Don't spend your time having anxiety about the things that you can't do anything about. Invest that effort and energy instead into all of those things that you can move the needle on and are solely within
Yeah.
your control.
Yeah, absolutely. And in this line, another question that we receive is about, are there a specific food that are very effective in reducing the level of ApoB or LDL in the blood?
Yeah, I think that's a good point about reducing ApoB levels. Recommendations to do that are the same recommendations that you'd have to lower LDL cholesterol levels, because the majority of ApoB that most people have is on LDL. So if you're going to lower your LDL levels, that's also going to bring those ApoB levels down. So there's kind of two nutrition things really to think about. One can help increase utilization of cholesterol. It's kind of how I like to think about it. And the other one can just help to reduce the amount that sticks around in your bloodstream. So if we think about saturated fats, which are fats that are solid at room temperature, for people that have high levels of cholesterol, we know that eating a diet that has more saturated fat in it can downregulate the LDL receptors on your liver that help to pull that LDL out of your bloodstream. So it can stick around in your bloodstream for longer, which means that those levels are going to be higher. So if you're someone that has high cholesterol, and I say that because not everyone is wired to have that downregulation of those LDL receptors based on saturated fat. But if your cholesterol levels are high, there's probably a pretty good likelihood that saturated fat is something that's impacting you. And we hear all the time, I eat the same diet as my spouse, but they don't have that issue. And it's okay that you and your spouse are genetically different. That's a good thing. If your spouse had the same genetics as you, we'd have lots of other problems that we have to talk about. So watching your saturated fat intake in the US, the primary way that we overeat saturated fat is just through animal proteins or other animal products. So not just meat, but that also goes into butter, half and half in your coffee, or heavy cream is so popular at the moment. Maybe from the keto wave, ice cream, those types of things are where we get most of our saturated fat. But for plants, we have coconut oil that contributes actually more saturated fat than butter. Per serving, palm oil is something we find a lot in more packaged or processed foods because it's economically cheap. And then cocoa butter is another one that tends to be very high in saturated fat. So watching your intake and monitoring that, you're never going to get to zero if you're watching your saturated fat. We've got saturated fat in all sorts of foods, including plant foods. But making sure that you're not having too much and really thinking about it as a 7-day average. If you've got steak and ice cream one day, maybe try and bring it down as low as you can the subsequent days to bring that moving average back down. The other thing that's really, really important is your soluble fiber intake. And soluble fiber, there's is one of two types of fiber. Soluble fiber swells when it comes into contact with water. So a great visualization for that is thinking about if you put beans or oats or chia seeds in water in the refrigerator overnight, they expand when you go back in the morning. And that's because they've absorbed that water. The other type is insoluble fiber. Insoluble fiber isn't impacted by water. It doesn't dissolve in water or absorb it. So visualizing that, broccoli, carrot, and celery in a cup of water overnight still look like broccoli, celery, and carrots the next morning. That's because that type of fiber is not something that's impacted by water. And the soluble fiber piece is what's so key for helping your body lower those ApoB levels and LDL cholesterol levels. How fiber works, I've heard someone say, I don't understand how fiber gets into your blood and pulls that cholesterol out. But one of the things that our body produces cholesterol for, what it uses it for, is to make a digestive compound called bile. And we need bile to be able to break fats down into a small enough form that they can be absorbed. And bile is produced utilizing cholesterol. So when we eat a diet that's really high in this soluble fiber, we trap that bile and transport it out of the body. Since we need bile to be able to digest fats, our body pulls on those cholesterol stores in order to replace it. But some of the other things that we do with cholesterol, like structural integrity of our cells or being able to produce more vitamin D or more sex hormones, we can't necessarily think, I want my cells to be more structurally sound. So we don't get to dictate really how much of our cholesterol level goes into those processes. But eating soluble fiber is 100% something that you can do that's going to impact how much of that cholesterol your body's utilizing. Because as you eat it and it binds to that bile, transports it out, we have to produce more of that. So we're going to pull on those cholesterol stores in order to replace them. Long way of saying saturated fat, trying to monitor it from animal sources, as well as those 3 plants of cocoa, palm, and coconut. And then best sources of soluble fiber, oats and barley are the 2 best. They have a type of soluble fiber called beta-glucan, which is just like the stickiest, but you can also find it in lots of nuts and seeds, beans, other whole grains. Artichokes are a good source. Anything that you think could swell, if you visualize that, probably is a pretty good source of soluble fiber. Also, berries, apples, and oranges are good sources of it too.
So Ashley, what is the effect, if at all, of a non-unsoluble fiber? What is it doing, if at all, for LDL or cholesterol decrease?
Not really anything. That doesn't mean you shouldn't eat fruits or vegetables. But that type of fiber is, it's great for filling you up. Maybe has an impact on how quickly your body is able to digest or absorb, carbohydrates. So it could impact glucose in your body. Definitely plays a role in moving foods through your digestive tract. But that insoluble fiber really doesn't play too much of a role directly in lowering LDL levels. But most, plants might have some combination of both of those. So beans are a good example. Good source of insoluble as well as soluble. So eating beans is going to have, the benefit of lowering the LDL level, even though that insoluble fiber in it didn't have a big impact. And I think this is why, a lot of people that are low carb or, follow maybe a more paleo style of eating, they eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. But we don't really find a ton of soluble fiber or enough soluble fiber just in fruits and vegetables. You really want to pull in those grains where we find the most of them, or most soluble fiber, beans where we find a lot, and then specifically some of those nuts and seeds too.
And if, as you said, someone that on paleo diet, can he supplement with soluble fiber? And if yes, what are the kind of supplements that you can use for a soluble fiber?
Yeah, you definitely can. I'd say the most common supplement is called psyllium husk, Psyllium. I will say though, that's a nasty supplement. If you mix it with water, you're supposed to mix it with 8 ounces of water and take it immediately. If you don't, it basically turns into cement, which is what happens in our body. We kind of want that sticky fibrous matrix to trap that bile. But you can, there are people that mix it with oatmeal. You could mix it kind of in all sorts of things. Just know it's going to really absorb water and make it pretty thick. Metamucil is, probably the most well-known fiber supplement that's out there, and psyllium husk is the type of fiber that Metamucil is made with. And usually fiber supplements, they have about 5 grams of fiber per supplement, but not typically enough. For women, our fiber goal is 25 grams. For men, it's 38 grams. I would not recommend someone take 7 servings of a fiber supplement. That's going to be uncomfortable for them, uncomfortable for everyone, probably within like a 5-mile radius. But you should really be trying to get a lot of this from your diet as well. You certainly can, again, supplement those extra 5 grams, but you don't want all of your fiber or soluble fiber coming from those supplements.
Yeah, I remember that I consumed those supplements and I felt like with not enough water. And I felt that I have a cement in my digestive tract, and it wasn't comfortable, to say the least.
Yeah, and
so be careful with that.
Yeah, older individuals that have problems swallowing, they're not recommended for it, because if you don't drink it with enough water, it really can become very difficult to swallowing, and the choking hazard too.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe the last question to you, we'll have more, but at least the last that I'm thinking right now is, what are the myths that you heard about in the social media about cholesterol, and what is the most crazy information that you have seen there about cholesterol?
I feel like maybe the most, maybe not crazy, but concerning thing I see is there's just so many people saying that it doesn't matter. And we do know that elevated levels of LDL and ApoB in particular, being even more specific, is associated with an increased risk of cardiovascular disease and incidents like heart attack and stroke. So that always really concerns me when I see that. Certainly your cholesterol is kind of one piece of the puzzle. Usually your doctor would also be looking at if you have high blood pressure, if you smoke, if you have diabetes, if you have a lot of excess body fat. Those are all things that increase the potential danger of having high cholesterol. But that one always really bugs me, because it is a lot of people that maybe for them, their cholesterol might not be the most pressing health issue. But if you look at kind of the landscape of people in the United States, 1 in 10 people have diabetes. Over 30 or 40% of the US adult population at this point does have excess body fat. I believe the number is 1/3 has hypertension. I don't know where smoking is now. I hope it's pretty low, but that information to me is just really dangerous to put out there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that it's a good lesson for our audience. Don't take a health or wellness advice from social media. That's really dangerous. Find an organization that you trust and you believe, and be careful from all of those gurus. I remember I've seen it. I spoke with a lot of people that told me running is bad. And I said, why it's bad? He said, I know one person that ran and got a cardiovascular event and died. I said, yeah, it's a 1 in 5 million. And yeah, he had most likely a bad gene. So you cannot take this example and come say that running is bad. It's the same time coming saying fiber is bad, or fat is bad, or carbohydrate is bad. Nothing is bad. It's all about the mix and the concentration and the balance between them. So really be careful about social media, and listen to the right people, and don't take an advice from social media. That can kill you. at the
Yeah.
end of the day.
And nothing exists like in extremes or absolutes. So I feel like a good way of navigating that is if someone says you always have to do this, or you can't do this at all, or this is the one thing that you have to focus on. It's not. As you just said, I think that's nothing is always good or always bad. And, other things I think that come up a lot is that I was told I can't eat fruit, or I can't eat eggs, I can't eat dairy, I can't eat shellfish. None of those are true. It's all about how those things kind of like fit in with everything else that you're doing. For me, if I was trying to watch my saturated fat intake, cutting out half and half or heavy cream from my coffee might be an easy decision for me to make. But I've worked with someone before that said she'd rather be a vegan than have to drink her one daily cup of coffee without half in it, which is great. We all get to make those decisions. So while it maybe wasn't a decision that would be most important for me, it might be for someone.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a good point. It's all about personalization. The best way to know is to test. So if
Yep.
you are consuming a lot of meat and your cholesterol is good and other markers are good, that's fine. It sounds like it's good for you. But if you see that the cholesterol is starting to get higher, or any other marker, or ApoB, let's say, you should be careful. So basically monitor and test and be sure that your machine is as optimized as possible. And if not, intervene and make it better.
Yeah. And I think, again, importantly, just because one person eats a lot of red meat and their cholesterol is perfect doesn't necessarily mean that everything that we know about people that are predisposed to elevated cholesterol, like it doesn't mean that those people should also go wild on red meat too. And we still know that, high intake of saturated fat is something that has an impact on some people. That's because it's not you. Doesn't mean that everyone else is wrong. Awesome. Okay. Well, I'm going to flip and pepper Gil with some questions now. So sticking around on cardiovascular fitness, what is the best physiological biomarker for cardiovascular health?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And it's something that actually becoming more and more interesting for all of us, because we see more and more that exercise and cardiovascular fitness specifically is very important for us to live better longer. And it's something that it's good for us to start working on as early as possible and continue to maintain. So to answer specifically for you, to your question, the answer is VO2max. And VO2max is basically the maximal oxygen consumption that you can have within a minute. And so it's measuring a milliliter of oxygen consumed in 1 minute divided by your body weight in a kilogram. And it's not easy to measure. So a lot of physiological markers or fitness trackers are providing this marker. I can say Apple Watch is one of the Garmin is another one, and you can see a lot of other. And I think that it's good to know that from those devices, but it's really inaccurate. I can give you my own example. When I look at the Apple Watch, my level is around 33. While when I went to a lab, and the best way to do it is if you want to really measure it, you need to go to a specific lab and basically run on the treadmill with a mask, a ventilation mask on your nose and mouth, and basically run faster and faster and faster until you get exhausted. And then there is some algorithm that calculates your VO2 max. I found that my VO2 max is around 43, while my VO2 max in Apple Watch was 33. So it's a very big difference. So, but I still think that it's good to see and have the level of your VO2 max every day via Apple Watch or Garmin or other, because that's give you a reference about how your body, is your VO2 max is going higher or lower. And you always need to strive to get it higher, because the higher it is, it's better.
So you can't necessarily trust the number, but you can trust the change.
The trend, yeah. You can trust the trend. And also go to those labs. There are plenty of labs like that. I think that I spent maybe $100 on that. And I'm planning to do it, I don't know, once a year or so, just to continue to see the accuracy. But between that, I think that something like Apple Watch that I'm using, it's good enough. Just to give you a reference, the highest VO2 max ever that I know about is for a cyclist that basically had a VO2 max of 97.5, which is really crazy.
Well,
Again, as I said, mine is a 43. There are also a lot of tables, and maybe we can have those tables in the show notes that basically show the VO2 max of males and females, and basically show the 50%, 10%, and so on, and the 95%. So I'm in the range of 50 to 59, so I'll discuss that. So the 50% for someone in my age is around 21, while the 95% is 50.7, and the 90% is 45.6. So I'm very close to the 90%, which make me very happy. That's that I'm pretty good, and I know that I'm working on that. I'm cycling, and I'm mountain biking, and I'm walking a lot. So that's good, and that can help me to improve it. What is also interesting, and I'm still stuck with males, I'll switch to women in a second. It's with age, the VO2 max on average decrease significantly. So, for example, if we stay with males, a male in the age of 20 to 29, the 95% is around 66, while 30 to 39 is 59, while 40 to 49 is 55, while 50 to 59 is 50. While 60 to 69 is 43, and then 70 to 79 is 40. And if you look at the 5 percentile, if you are 70 to 79, on average is only 16. So basically, we see a significant drop of the level of VO2 max. And why VO2 max is so important? Because VO2 max showing what is your aerobic capacity. So maybe at the age of 20, you want to run marathon, but maybe at the age of 50, you just want to do some hike. And in the age of 60 to 69, you want to walk from your bedroom to the bathroom to do what you need to do. And in order to do that, you need to have aerobic capacity. And if you don't have aerobic capacity, it will be hard for you to do that. And all of us, again, I assume everyone that listens to this podcast would like to live better longer. So we want to delay the decrease of the VO2 max as much as we can. And hopefully it was clear. Now, if we are jumping to women, to the table of women, so women on average have a bit lower VO2 max. We know that if you look at a marathon runner, for example, the males are running, I think that the males are close to, as much as I remember, to 2.2, 2 hours, 2 minutes. And I think that a week ago, a woman broke the marathon record in Berlin. And I think that if I recall correctly, she ran something like 2:10. So there is always a bit of difference between males and females. Males, they usually have a higher VO2 max on average than women. And for example, the 95 percentile of a male at the age of 20 to 29 is 66, while for women is only 56. A male have a higher VO2 max for women, but the decline is similar. Women also have a decline in VO2 max. And what we need to do, all of us, again, people that want to live better longer, is try to fight it. Exactly like what we discussed about the LDL cholesterol and ApoB. Try to fight it and try to, I'm not excited that I'm in the 90 percentile of 50 to 59. I want to be in the 90 percentile of 40 to 49. Why not? Try to give yourself a challenge and try to be the best as you can. And hopefully you will be able to live to 100 and still climb mountain at that age. So that's about VO2 max. Hopefully it was clear. I was trying to make it as simple as possible.
Yeah, I think something that's so cool about VO2 max is like, cross training. As Gil said, he is walking, he's running, he's biking. All of those things have an influence on your VO2 max. And it's, just as if you were lifting weights, as you can see your max squats go up, it's cool to be able to see your VO2 max go up too. Literally how well your body is able to utilize, absorb or breathe in oxygen, but really utilize oxygen to make energy for those endurance events. I know I'm a dietitian, but I feel like exercise is nothing can change your muscle cells like exercise. And that's where so much of our metabolism happens. This is a cool metric that really hones in on that. But what are some other reasons that VO2 max is so important? Are there biomarkers that we know of that are correlated with maybe having higher levels of VO2 max or lower VO2 max being correlated with some markers?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we are fortunate at the InsideTracker that we have a database of around 100,000 humans. So we can start slicing and dicing it. And we have a lot of them have a VO2 max level. So we try to look and see what is the correlation between VO2 max and physiological marker and also blood biomarkers. So if we'll start with a physiological marker, VO2 max is strongly correlated with resting heart rate, and it's negatively correlated. And it makes sense because when your resting heart rate is low, your heart is basically when you are at rest, is pumping less, and that's allowing him to rest more, but it's allowing him to pump more. So basically, lower resting heart rate is negatively correlated with VO2 max. Also, at the time that you are awake at sleep, so basically, you have a better VO2 max, you're less awake during sleep, you sleep better, which is also pretty good. But it's positively correlated with a step count. Again, it's not a rocket science. When you walk more, you improve your VO2 max, and we might discuss it later. Also, activity in MET. MET is a metabolic equivalent. So basically, you're more active, you have a higher VO2 max. The sleep duration. So you have a higher VO2 max. There is a correlation with a longer sleep time. And also REM and deep sleep. So basically, all the things that are positive in the physio side are positively correlated with VO2 max, while all the things that are should be lower are negatively regulated. So that's why we see it as a master regulator of physiological markers. But what is really exciting and something that I wasn't expecting is that it's correlated very strongly with metabolic-related blood biomarkers. So it's never negatively correlated with ApoB, cholesterol, LDL, triglyceride. Actually, you discussed it for the last half an hour, and now we're saying, hey, you want to improve them, improve your VO2 max, and you will be okay. But also negatively correlated with a fasting glucose, hemoglobin A1C, HSCRP, which is a marker on inflammation, and white blood cells that, again, a marker on inflammation. So basically, if you want to see a correlation between VO2 max and those markers, if you are improving your VO2 max, there is a correlation with decreasing those markers. Again, I'm not saying that there is a cause and effect, but there is a strong correlation between them. And a positively correlation with HDL cholesterol, testosterone, and blood iron related markers. So again, it's amazing that VO2 max is correlated in the right way with so many physiomarkers and blood biomarkers, which it's really amazing. I was amazed when I have seen it.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's not a new marker, but maybe it's a new marker that they're trying to find associations with other aspects of health. Like, I'm curious if there's anything out there on sleep apnea and VO2 max, because that would make a lot of sense. Impacting sleep quality. It's cool.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I haven't researched it, but I would say that it makes a lot of sense that people with sleep apnea, if they can improve their VO2 max, they can improve their sleep quality. I would assume that it is, but again, I haven't researched it, so I cannot say 100%.
As a Longevity by Design podcast listener, you understand the value of improving your health for today and for all the years ahead. And if you want to live your healthiest, longest life possible, you need to understand what's going on inside. At InsideTracker, we take a personalized approach to health span optimization that eliminates guesswork from your wellness plan. InsideTracker analyzes blood biomarker and DNA data, along with physiomarker data from fitness trackers like Oura Ring, to deliver personalized food, supplement, lifestyle, and exercise recommendations that allow you to take control and improve your health span. And for a limited time, Longevity by Design listeners can get 20% off at the InsideTracker store. So if you're ready to receive a personal health analysis and data-driven wellness plan to optimize your body for the long haul, then it's time to start inside. Visit InsideTracker.com/podcast to get started today. That's InsideTracker.com/podcast to get started today.
And if someone does want to improve their VO2max, what can we do to bring that number up into 90th or 95th percentile?
Yeah, so again, I cannot assure anyone to increase it to 90 or 95%, but what I can assure you that if you will do those intervention, there is a good chance that you will improve it. And again, it's I cannot run marathon in 2 hours, 2 minutes, even if InsideTracker will support me 100% because I don't have the genetics for that. But I might be able to finish a marathon. So it's the same here. So doing those intervention will help you to reach your potential and get to the best VO2max that you can have. So there are several different interventions. One of them is high intensity interval training or HIIT. So doing those kind of exercise can.
If someone does want to improve their VO2max, what can we do to bring that number up into 90th or 95th percentile?
Yeah, so again, I cannot assure anyone to increase it to 90 or 95%, but what I can assure you that if you will do those intervention, there is a good chance that you will improve it. And again, it's I cannot run marathon in 2 hours, 2 minutes, even if InsideTracker will support me 100% because I don't have the genetics for that. But I might be able to finish a marathon. So it's the same here. So doing those intervention will help you to reach your potential and get to the best VO2max that you can have. So there are several different interventions. One of them is high intensity interval training or HIIT. So doing those kind of exercise can have been shown to improve VO2max. Also low intensity training like running, biking, hiking, rowing, especially in zone 2 exercise. So basically in a level that you are not running at your top, but you are running in a way that you can run, let's say, for a few hours and you can talk with someone. This is a way that can allow you to build your VO2max. One point that is important to know that someone that is really couch potato, let's say, or beginner, it's much easier for him or her to improve the VO2max. But if you are the Tour de France cyclist and you want to improve your VO2max, it will be harder for you because your VO2max is better. It makes sense. It's like if you are close to your limit, you'll improve it slightly. But if you are doing everything wrong right now and you change it to the right, you have a better chance to improve it. And it's very similar looking at all the cholesterol that we discussed before. It's much easier for someone that is obese and not exercising and eating badly to improve his LDL cholesterol or ApoB than someone that eat well and exercise well and sleep well and all of that. So it's the same here. Just take into consideration that if you are already good and you want to be very good, it's much harder than if you are bad and you want to be okay.
Yeah. I think those, and you also mentioned this above with step count being correlated with it is, oftentimes people might think they don't have enough time to get in a quote unquote good workout. Any amount of time is helpful. If it's a 10-minute walk, it's still better than skipping it. Especially for beginners. You don't have to go to the gym for an hour and a half and lift a lot of weights and get really sweaty to be able to impact this VO2max necessarily. Okay, what about sleep and its impact on some of those same physiological markers or blood biomarkers?
Yeah, so in the same study, we also decided to look at sleep. So again, we have a data set of 100,000 people, and we decided to divide them to 4 different groups. So the groups that sleep less than 5 hours, the group that sleep 5 to 7 hours, the group that sleep the optimal time based on literature, 7 to 9 hours, and the group that sleep 9 hours or more, which the literature showed that it's too much. And what we found that if we're going back to VO2max, the VO2max is optimal or highest when in the subgroup that sleep between 7 and 9 hours. And then in the other groups that they sleep either more or less, the VO2max on average is lower. So again, suggesting that sleeping 7 to 9 hours is the optimal amount of sleep for us. We also found that some of the blood biomarkers are also are optimized or the best when in the optimal sleep zone, again, between 7 and 9 hours. And that's, for example, LDL, HDL, and some other that we looked at. So again, it's show, and I'm sure that a lot of you know, and if you don't know, you should know that you should not look lightly at sleep. Sleep is very important, and you should dedicate the right amount of time, the environment, and the preparation. And basically, for me, the day is the preparation for sleep. When I'm exercising, and when I'm eating, and what I'm doing at night, and when I'm going to sleep, and the temperature of the room. It's literally a science. How can you optimize your sleep? And I just explained to you how important is the sleep. And if you really want to live better longer, you should take a lot of consideration and try to optimize your sleep, because it's super, super important.
Yeah, and something you talk about all the time is not sacrificing your sleep for other things. So, if you're only going to get 4 hours of sleep, it might not be the best thing to wake up and run 10 miles. Getting an extra 2 hours of sleep on that day is probably a better thing for your overall health.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm trying to be like a switch watch in a way, to go to sleep between 10 to 10:30, and even I know I have a social effect, and I'm running away and go to sleep. It's like my friend looking at me like a nerd, but I'm fine with that. I think that I really don't want to compromise my sleep, and definitely I'm not waking up at 5 a.m. Sneak a run or sneak a cycling activity. I prefer to sleep, and then if I can't, I prefer to sleep and not exercise the same day than to cut my sleep, because it's so important.
How about a newer marker that maybe new to the general population, but not new to individuals that probably are used to working at physical therapy or with elderly individuals? Grip strength. So can you explain kind of what that is and how that correlates maybe to muscle strength overall, and how that muscle strength and muscle mass is so important as we age?
Yeah, so it's very interesting that grip strengths have been shown to correlate very closely to longevity, meaning people that have a lower grip strength tend to live shorter, and the people that have a stronger grip strength tend to live longer. We don't understand 100% why, but it makes a lot of sense that grip strength is basically a marker of your muscle tone. And if you have a stronger grip strength, most likely you will have a stronger muscle or more muscle. And as we know, muscle is very important. As you mentioned before, muscle is a metabolic organ that use a lot of energy and sometimes a lot of fat. And also it's a organ that allow us to maintain or protect our body from falls, and protect our bones. And if we are going one step further, high percentage of the cause of death in the United States is basically a fall that you break your hip, and then if you are above the age of 65, you have on average less than a year to live after you break your bone, your hip. And the reason for that is that most people that break their hip from the beginning, they don't have enough muscle tone. But also, when you break the hip and you don't have a lot of muscle or a lot of strength, you have a less chance to recover from that. And that can influence your mood, and influence the way that you will fight it. And you really need to fight it when it's happened. Also, the more muscle will allow you to be more balanced. So there are a lot of reasons why we need more muscle. Also, you have more muscle, you have a better chance to carry your grocery from the grocery shop to your house, and to take your grandchild and lift him, and I don't know, do a lot of activity by yourself at home. So there are a lot of reasons why muscle tone is important. And so grip strength is something that we recently added to the InsideTracker based on 10 new markers of DNA markers that basically you can look at a high number of single nucleotide polymorphism and come up with a prediction whether you have a stronger or weaker grip strength. And I can give you my example. My example is I realized that actually I have a higher risk to lower grip strength based on InsideTracker DNA score. I decided that I want to test it. And actually, all of you go to Amazon and buy something called Dynometer. And it's actually cost like $20. And you can basically try to press it and see what is your grip strength. And I found that really my grip strength is not amazing. And that's basically convinced me to spend more time on a strength activity than on endurance. Because as I told you before, my VO2max is pretty good, but both are important. It's not like VO2max alone won't bring you to 100 and won't bring you to, I don't know, to run a marathon or to climb a mountain at the age of 100. You need both. So I realized based on that I should exercise more. And indeed, in the last 6 months or so, I'm spending a lot of time in the gym, pumping iron and lifting weight. And I see that I build the muscle, and I also seen that my grip strength improved. So again, it's going in the discussion that we had before. Your genetics is not your destiny. It's just basically showing the card that you have right now, and you can play the card and fight it. So I think that this is a good example that show you can use a lot of data, and that's what InsideTracker is doing. It's bringing you data about your blood and data about your DNA and data about your physiology. We just discussed it with VO2max and the resting heart rate and so on. But then if you synthesize it and get the right conclusion from that, and my conclusion was, okay, go more to the gym and lift more weight and don't spend too much time on cycling, but spend more time in the next to the free weight. That is the right conclusion for Gil, but for Ashley, it might be different. Ashley might need to spend more time on the treadmill. So I think that this is exactly a personalized wellness plan or a personalized health plan. Have all the information, synthesize it, or ask someone like InsideTracker to synthesize it for you. And then based on that, come with the conclusion, stick with that, then test again. And maybe in a few months, I will realize that my strength is so strong that I should now try to balance it instead of spending 5 days a week in the next to the weight. Maybe I should do less days there and more days on the bicycle. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's nice that dynometer, is that what it's called? Dynometer? To give you objective measurement of that strength. And just like your VO2max or how much you're lifting, whatever, it's a number that you can track to try and see a trend with. As opposed to like how you're feeling or how you think you're doing. It's nice to be able to have those data points.
Yeah, exactly. It's unbiased. Nobody can, hey, I feel like I'm good today. No, you don't feel like. The dynometer telling you whether you are good or not. No, you cannot argue with the dynometer, and you cannot argue with your LDL level. It is what it is.
Yeah. How about any additional testing that you'd recommend for some of these health span optimizers in addition to blood work?
Yeah, so that's actually a question that we received from some of our listeners, and they said 6-pack. If I can do 6 tests, what should I do in order to try to optimize myself and be the best I can be at the age of 80, 90, or 100? So as I mentioned before, one new tool that we just added to InsideTracker is the healthspan DNA score. So there are scores, I said, about grip strength, but also scores about your cognition, how good will be your cognition at the older age, epigenetic age, basically whether your epigenetic will tell you that you are older or younger than your age, also aging as a whole, whether you are might be older or younger based on your DNA, age of menopause for women. So basically, we can predict when you will have the menopause, and earlier menopause mean that most likely a shorter life. Again, you can fight all of that, but that's what your genetics say. and many more. And if you want to learn more about that, we recorded an episode about the healthspan DNS course a couple of weeks ago. So when this episode will be out, I'm sure that episode will be there, and you can spend an hour or so with one of the most talented scientists that we have, Bartek, that discuss it very well. Another tool that I really like is the DEXA scan. And the DEXA scan is basically a low radiation scan that you spend literally 2 minutes on a sort of a bed that a machine scan you, but it's give you so much information. So it's provide bone mineral density, which is very important, especially for a postmenopausal women, because they tend to lose a bone. It's provide the body fat percentage and also the localization of fat, and also muscle percentage and the localization of the muscle. And maybe the most importantly for me, or in my opinion, is the visceral fat, how much visceral fat you have, because the visceral fat is the fat that is the most dangerous for us, and we need to try to have as little as possible. So again, DEXA scan is something that you can just Google it, and there are hundreds of those around the country. Just go and do that test, have a baseline, and then I will do it every year or so. And based on that, I can give you the example. I done it a few months ago, and I was surprised that my visceral fat is high. So I'm now trying and working hard to decrease as much as I can my visceral fat. The rest is okay, but the visceral fat is high. So I'm trying to fight it. So again, you receive an information and you can act upon. Another one is VO2max. We spent a lot of time on it today, so I won't discuss it again, but that's an important data point. Another one is a calcium score. So basically, it's another scan that you can do, and it's look at your arteries and see whether you have some area in the arteries that might be starting to be clogged. And if there are, you can have some intervention. Some intervention can be drug, other can be, if it's a very serious stent. But there are a lot of intervention that you can do and prevent a stroke or cardiovascular event, which can be deadly. So that's definitely something that I recommend. By the way, I haven't done it yet. I should do it, but that's something on my list.
I do know in some states it's as cheap as $50 to be able to go and get one. Sometimes insurance covers it, sometimes they won't.
So that's another good point. No excuse for anyone. Go and do it. Grip strength, we discuss it. And again, $20 on Amazon. So but everyone can afford a $20 test. And I think that the sleep and sleep phase via the fitness tracker is a very important. We discussed how important is sleep. And if you measure it, you can improve it. You cannot manage what you don't measure. So measure the sleep phase via Oura Ring, or Fitbit, or Garmin, even Apple Watch. Now you can measure your sleep phases, sleep stages, and that can give you a lot of information and allow you to optimize your sleep.
Since we integrate with a lot of these different sleep trackers, is there one, if someone's going to make an investment that really wants to be able to investigate their sleep, unsponsored, just since we've worked with them, is there one of these trackers that, tends to do a better job of that than others?
Yeah, I think that all of them are doing a good job. I haven't used Garmin because I'm not a triathlete or runner, so I cannot say anything about Garmin, but I think that they are pretty good and a lot of people are using it. What I am using or used in the past are Fitbit, Apple Watch, and the Oura Ring. I really like the Oura Ring for sleep because it's it's less distracting when you sleep than having the watch on your hand. And it's providing you a pretty good information. Also, comparing to the Apple Watch, you don't need to charge it every day. You charge it every 5 days. And I think that they have a pretty good algorithm. So if you ask me what I like, and I'm not trying to advertise anything, I really like the Oura Ring because of all the reasons that I mentioned before.
And I think important, we have those 6 that you mentioned, but just having the data is not enough. Like having the data and then using that data to inform your next steps are really where the money comes from, so to speak. Just knowing those numbers on their own doesn't necessarily do anything. And knowing what to do is also
Absolutely.
important.
Yeah.
All right. How about some another user question? What are some weight loss strategies that have proven to be effective in the long term?
Yeah. So that's a very good question. I will start from the end. For the long term, I don't know on any uh, weight loss strategies that have been shown to be proven for the long term. We are going back to our discussion before. There is no silver bullet, and there is no quick. There is
Yeah.
no quick and dirty here. You need to work on it. I can say that my weight is pretty stable in the last 20 years, but I'm working hard on it. I'm hoping on and we'll discuss it maybe later. I'm hoping on the scale every day and seeing whether I gain weight or lost weight. And if I gain weight, I will try to manage my food consumption that day, not to gain weight again. And if I lost weight, maybe I can have a cheat day. So I think that you need to find the right approach that's right for you, and everyone is different. And you also need to find what is your weak spot. I know that my weak spot is that I like to snack at the evening. So my approach is I'm trying to force myself not to eat after 7 p.m. and then I can remove the weak spot that I have. So everyone, I think, need to understand is a weak spot. By the way, Ashley, you have a lot of experience with that, so I would love to hear your comments and your trick later. But I think that what is exciting right now is that we have a really new world. So a couple of years ago, a new kind of drug, the GLP-1 the agonist, the Saxenda and other, have developed. And those drugs are really a miracle drug. They were developed for diabetic. But what the researchers observe is that everyone that used those drugs, almost everyone, lost around 15% of their body weight, which is amazing.
Mm.
I think that the drawback of that is that we don't know yet what happened when you pause using it. And most likely, if you pause using it and you are not trying to maintain your weight, you will gain the weight because every other measure of weight loss, it's happened. So it might be that some obese people will need to use the GLP-1 for life, similar to, I don't know, injecting insulin for diabetic. But I think that that's amazing because we found, I'm saying the scientific community found that being obese is not because you are lazy or a bad person or whatever other nickname bad nickname that people say about the obese population, but there is a real molecular problem that they have. And basically they feel hungry all the time. And this drug allows them to feel full and then decrease their food consumption. So that's, in my opinion, the star of a proven way. But there are a few other like bariatric surgery, which can decrease up to 30% or even more of your weight. Other way is a caloric restriction. And basically you cut the amount of calories that you eat. It's a normal diet. In model organism, actually, caloric restriction have been shown to increase lifespan. So that's even more exciting, at least for me. Intermittent fasting is another way, is basically very popular today is the 8-16. So feed yourself at 8 hours and fast for 16 hours. What is important there is you cannot eat 5,000 calories in 8 hours and then expect that you lose weight. So you should eat normally for 8 hours. Basically, that means that you will eat a bit less, and then you will lose weight. What is nice about that, it's pretty easy. It's one intervention. You come saying, okay, I'm starting to eat at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. or noontime and stop eating, I don't know, at 6 p.m. And then that's what you need to do. But again, don't feed yourself too much at the feeding hours. Another point about the intermittent fasting, there is a lot of data that started to come and show that it's better not to eat too late, most likely because of sleep, but also other reasons that we don't understand. So if you are doing intermittent fasting, try to eat dinner or the last meal as early as possible, and don't eat dinner at 10 p.m. and just start eating at 2 p.m. That's less efficient than stop eating at 6 p.m. and start eating at noontime or something like that. So those are the point that I have, but Ashley, I would love to hear your comment based on your expertise.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'll say is we just recorded a really awesome episode with Dr. Spencer Nadolsky about GLP-1s. We spent a lot of time talking about that for anyone that's interested in them because it's so new. I feel like a point that's so important is that you don't just want to focus on weight loss in general. You don't want to lose all your muscle mass. Gil just went through how important VO2max is, as well as grip strength. Those are two things that are, correlated with your muscles and being able to utilize them. So usually if I work with someone that's interested in weight loss, I encourage them to think about, instead of taking in less energy, thinking on ways that they can make their body require more energy. In order to lose weight, you have to find a calorie deficit, but you have to be able to sustain a calorie deficit. The stats on weight loss are not very good. And I think it's because most people, when they go about weight loss, it's in very unsustainable ways. They are trying to do a keto diet, or they don't eat, I don't know, something 7 days or 6 days a week. And then they go wild on that thing when they can have it on the last day. So with everything, even all of these changes that you might want to make based on your DEXA scan or your grip strength or your calcium score, all of those changes that you implement are only going to be successful if they are things that you can sustain, because you will not maintain any result that you get if you can't maintain the method that you utilize to get there. So some things that I always like to encourage, focusing on increasing your muscle mass. In order to do that, you have to do strength training. So you have to cause some muscle damage. And then you have to eat enough protein to help your body not only maintain your muscle mass, but hopefully help it to deposit more, to gain more lean muscle mass. So making sure you're taking in enough protein in addition to doing some strength training, and it can be just 15 minutes twice a week. And then always in your back pocket, for most people, the ability to walk is there. So don't underestimate how much your body's going to benefit from just going for a walk. So, instead of trying to calculate and tally all of your foods throughout the day to see if you have found some sort of deficit, which is hard, focus on building that muscle mass, which is going to require your body to utilize more energy to maintain it. As well as, again, walking is always a way that you can expend extra energy as well. And if you're not sure how much energy you should be taking in, that's another thing that those DEXA scans do that I think are pretty great. They can give you your resting metabolic rate, and then based on how active you are, you can see how many additional calories you should be eating. Again, that's something that's different for everyone. It's going to look at your lean muscle mass. It's going to take into consideration maybe your age, your height, your weight, your gender, and it's going to be able to spit out roughly a pretty, accurate compared to some of the other calculations you might have of how much energy you should have per day. And then you're going to add an activity factor. So if you don't exercise, you'll be somewhat near your resting metabolic rate, but still probably higher than it. Up to if you work out for 3 hours a day, then we also want to make sure you're taking in enough energy too. So knowing those things, I think, can also be really helpful. Just because someone on the internet eats 1,300 calories doesn't mean that that's what your body needs.
Yeah. And I think that all of that are very good points. And I think that it's also you need to have a balance of the macro and micronutrients. So you mentioned the keto diet that basically you don't have enough carb, and I assume that you miss other macro and micronutrients. So it's very important. At the end of the day, our food is broken down to macro and micronutrient. Macronutrient can be fat or protein or carbohydrate or fiber, and micronutrient can be, magnesium and the calcium and the potassium and the vitamin D and B12. So it's very important to have a balance of that, even when you are in diet, because it's if not, you might lose weight, but you might make another problem. So it's very important to be sure that all in balance. And again, knowledge is the power. So get tested and be sure that everything is in balance. And also try to find what are you feeding and are you feeding a balanced diet. And Ashley, you and me are working now on a solution like that at InsideTracker that we can tell you exactly are you consuming enough B12? Are you consuming enough magnesium? Are you consuming enough fiber and so on, or protein? And then again, you have the knowledge, and then you can find, okay, what should I do in order to?
Yeah.
So very important to know the macro and micronutrient on top of all.
Yeah. Weight loss, but frail and nutrient deficient is not usually like the goal that we would go for. And there's some study, and I'm blanking on, I can't remember, but it looked at individuals that were successful with maintaining their weight loss after bariatric surgery. And on average, most of those people were walking about 5 miles a day. They ate breakfast and they ate a more low fat, higher carb diet that met their protein needs. And of course, everything is individualized. But it's funny that a lot of that is very different than people that are trying to do the keto diet. And of course, people can be very successful on keto, but they have to be able to maintain that keto diet long term to really be able to reap the benefits of, any weight loss that comes from that. And doing those types of diets where you lose a lot of weight and then regain a lot of weight, typically what we see is people gain more weight than where they originally started. And each time you lose weight, you can lose bone mineral density for women as well, which, obviously is not something that's overall going to support your long-term health or your longevity. All right, Gil, next question. How about NMN versus NR? Which is best? Which is the best NAD plus precursor, and what should I consume?
Yeah, that's a question that I get asked every day. And it's an interesting question. So let me try to approach it from a different angle. So I just came from the most important scientific conference about longevity called ARDD in Copenhagen, where all the leaders in the aging research spent literally a week discussing longevity. And I've seen a lot of session about the NAD precursor, namely NMN and NR. And I know that there are two camps, one saying NMN is better and the other is saying NR. And I'm trying actually to attack it from the top and say, do we really need to take them? Are they really beneficial for us? So what I learned at that conference is there are a lot of interesting preliminary results in model organisms that those NAD analogs can help those model organisms in health and maybe even in longevity. But unfortunately, until today, there is no real data related to human. So I couldn't find any significant, strong data that show that a human that consumes NMN or NR can improve his health, longevity, wellness. So what I would recommend our listener or audience to do is to wait consuming them, because I'm not sure that there is a benefit for that, and maybe there is a harm. And by the way, I'm not consuming them because of that. Another interesting point that in a month or so, we are planning to interview one of the leader in scientists, actually professor in studying aging, that focus on his studies on the NAD analog. And there we will literally deep dive into those NAD analogs, and we'll try to provide a very deep understanding about them. Because we understand that there is a lot of excitement and anxiety and interest about those analogs. But the bottom line, if you will ask me, and again, you don't have to ask me, you can ask others, I wouldn't recommend taking neither of them.
Okay, maybe along the same lines with that, another user question is, why are some health benefits not included in the app? For example, NMN, resveratrol, intermediate fasting, or cold showers. Or why do we not ask for NAD plus levels?
Yeah. Again, a good question. And I think that I answered the question about NMN in NAD level. But for the other, for example, for resveratrol, so we are recommending resveratrol only for a subpopulation that have a glucose in the level of pre-diabetic or diabetic, because we found a peer-reviewed scientific publication that showed that consuming resveratrol for that subpopulation will allow them to decrease their fasting glucose. So what we are doing, it's not like we are looking at a specific supplement like NMN and saying, oh, we have to add it and let's find an excuse to add it. Instead of that, we are looking at it in a different way. We are kind of saying, okay, if NMN, let's look at everything that's published about NMN, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And let's try to develop a sort of a meta-analysis, basically looking at all of that, understand what is the population, what is the size of the study, what are the results, what is the end indication. And then our scientists, looking at all of that, make a decision whether there is a reason to provide recommendation for that. Because we really want you, again, to live better longer. So we don't want to give you a recommendation if it's not a recommendation that we believe that there is a science on it, and a recommendation that we will follow if we receive this recommendation. In the example of the cold shower, our scientific team looked into that. Very recently, we had a recommendation related to that. So we have recommendation for that. But for other, we haven't seen yet a data that justify adding recommendation. And again, we are trying to be as scientific as possible. And we want you really to live better longer and not just selling you NAD or NMN or how. By the way, InsideTracker is not selling any supplement. We are not selling any food, and we are not selling your treadmill. We are just providing you recommendation. We're trying to look at your interests and your interests only. So we're really trying to be the guardian angel for health for you. So that's why you are not seeing some of them in InsideTracker.
And investing your time and money in things that we believe will move the needle. It's probably not dangerous to take a cold shower, but could you be using that 5 minutes better doing something else?
Exactly. It's in cold shower, it's your time, but consuming NMN, for example, we don't know. Maybe there is a bad side effect that nobody knows yet. So if there is no benefit, why to take the risk?
Yeah, and there's a lot of work that goes into all of those recommendations. It is not just one study that comes out or one video on TikTok that it worked for somebody. There's a lot of scientific rigor that goes in on the science team to produce only the strongest recommendations that we can.
Yeah, and maybe in the future, Ashley, we can have ask me anything about how InsideTracker developed the recommendation. I think that it's will be fascinating to our listeners to see how much work and how much time and how rigor it is and how careful we are to really represent you and give you the best recommendation possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe a little more detail about all of the types of studies that are out there and why we specifically look for just certain ones. Okay, last tip or last question here, since we end all of our episodes with asking our guests what their top tip for health span is. Do you have one that you, or a few maybe that you want to share?
Yeah, so as you know, I think that we almost crossed the 50 episode of Longevity by Design. So we heard a lot of very good tips. But for me, the best tip, in my opinion, is basically use InsideTracker and have a holistic view of your body. And based on that, receive the best recommendation that's good for you, personalized for you, and follow them. So it's very hard to give, to provide a cookie cutter or I'm saying sleep more. Yeah, sleep more is important, but maybe for you, you're already sleeping well. So maybe the best tip for you is spend an hour a day in the gym pumping iron. Or for me, it's I don't know, going for a run. So I think that the best tip that I can provide to you, use a tool such as InsideTracker to receive the best recommendation that fits for you and follow that. But what is your tip, Ashley?
I don't know if I can say one. I feel like the more and more we learn about exercise and just changes that happen in your muscle cell, like every time I talk about it, it makes me want to go home and like do something active. But I think some of the favorite things that I've heard or we've heard from some of our guests are also focusing on community and mental health, that you can be the healthiest person in the world, but if you're miserable and have no one to share your life with, it doesn't matter. And just the impact of how important your overall outlook is, managing your anxieties, managing your stress. In addition to utilizing your muscle cells and eating oatmeal, I would say that that's an important one that I would definitely point out and think, maybe we don't give enough light to. When we're talking about more hard science stuff, we can see in studies, those are kind of more softer things related to health span.
Yeah. No, I think that that's a very good point that I haven't paid attention before those episodes about mental health. And it is so important, especially post-COVID or during COVID. We lost our society, we lost our friends, and we need to get back into that. We are a social creature, and it's very important for us to spend time with family and friends.
And manage your stress.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's it on our first AMA. We're happy to do more of them, and we look forward to connecting with all of you in the future.
Thanks for listening to Longevity by Design. Please subscribe to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Longevity by Design is powered by InsideTracker, a personalized health optimization platform that helps people improve their lives by improving their bodies from the inside out, using personalized, science-backed recommendations for nutrition, supplements, and lifestyle changes. To learn more, visit InsideTracker.com/podcast.